Well, yeah, good morning, everyone. And this presentation today is kind of like a sequel to last year. I think I see a lot of familiar faces last year. I did the bank core report in FIBO, and that was focusing on semantic ETL, moving banking data from sources into staging, into FIBO. Now this year, it's in a way, it's the same story about investment fund data. However, the focus is not on the ETL. This year, the focus is on legal reasoning, like putting a knowledge layer on top of what we have with the FIBO. So I hope it's something new and interesting. Now we all complied with the financial regulations. We all got done with the dreadful CCAR and so on. And we heard over the past 2 days, a lot of banks have started FIBO implementation programs. And now this, I believe, is an opportunity now to derive knowledge from our FIBO data and also, well, to be prepared for the next regulatory challenge. Now, even if it's now, when my presentation is about Dodd-Frank is about to be repealed, so it's not an environment where everybody is very concerned about regulatory compliance. But okay, am I running? Oh yeah. Before it gets repealed. Yeah, let's get this over before the newsflash comes now or tweet, no? Okay, why attend? And here, can we see it? This is supposed to be, yeah, this is supposed to be Dennis here. Now to learn about practices and deploying FIBO. And this may look familiar. Last year I had this use case diagram. Now what is new in this year is to add on the use case for the finance side of adding insight and knowledge, and also from an architecture perspective, how to encode business rules within the FIBO. And now compliance overwhelms financial institutions. Every 10 years, that's from feedback I got, basically the regulatory burden doubles. And the conventional approach with hundreds of people mapping and documenting cannot cope. And I've seen it on Wall Street, like at Deutsche, there was a whole floor cleared out, emptied, and hundreds of mappers, consultants, and so on, sitting there basically over Excel sheets and trying to figure out the connection. I think, yeah, like David Newman was very passionate yesterday about what all the other people in the other rooms are doing, which is what I call the conventional approach. No? Okay, now the brave new world is on top of the data to have an information layer, and this is the FIBO. This is the value proposition of the FIBO. Now, my proposition is, on top of the FIBO, I want to have a knowledge layer of derived, of inferred knowledge. And I will show some more what this precisely means. Examples of this knowledge layers is to say something like Vanguard Group is required to register with the Securities and Exchange Commission as an investment advisor. Whereas here the Reedsboro portfolio managers, they are not exempted from registration because they only serve insurance clients. These are examples of knowledge that you can derive out of the FIBO data. And how we do that, how do we get to this holy grail? We get to it via laws and regulations that are within the ontology, the financial data that we get from the FIBO, and in the middle, bringing these gears into motion, is legal reasoning. Okay, and our example today is from the Securities and Exchange Commission, and I want to answer the question whether a firm is required to register as an investment advisor or not. And this requirement, it is specified in the United States Code and in the Code of Federal Regulations. And now what here the semantic compliance does is it encodes the regulation into basically a hierarchy here of defined classes. And then when we run the inference engines, then the inference engine, the reasoner, populates these classes with instances here of FIBO functional business entities that are exempted here from registration with the SEC. So this is the output after the reasoner does its thing. Okay, and now what it also does is then it infers an object property. It creates an object property that goes from a functional business entity to the legal status. In this case, East Jamaica Nationwide meets the definition of an investment advisor as per US Code ATB 211. And now this property here, regulated as connected to the FIBO business entities, that is coming out of the reasoning process. That's an inference the reasoner creates. And then it's available just like a normal object property. Now, how do we get this to work? We need a couple of prerequisites and building blocks. We have foundation work to do. We have atomic conditions, financial and legal rules. And now, foundation, and actually Mike Bennett mentioned LKIF, the legal ontology yesterday. I was really excited when I heard him mention it. So what FIBO is in finance, LKIF is in the legal domain. Now, legal compliance department, they cross finance and legal. Half the staff are lawyers. So what the proposition of the financial regulation ontologies is I need both. I need to pick a financial reference ontology, this is FIBO, and I need a legal ontology, and there I pick LKIF. And LKIF was a European Union project, the Estrella project, and it's still, I guess, more known and used in Europe than in the US. And now what FINREG ONT, the financial regulation ontology, does is, so LKIF provides the classes for government bodies, acts of law, legislation, supervisory mandate, legal documents. The financial regulation ontology extends LKIF and populates it with the structure of the US laws and regulations. And then now what the financial regulation ontology does is now, in order to use the two imported reference ontology, I need an ontology alignment. So basically what this is here in all the equivalent class axiom says that all individuals in the FIBO statute law class are also a member of the LKIF statute and vice versa. And other examples of this alignment are regulation uses the same name in LKIF and FIBO, and regulatory agency, we call it in FIBO, LKIF calls it a regulatory authority. The alignment establishes a formal equivalence of the two concepts. And this facilitates browsing, visualization, querying, and reasoning across FIBO and LKIF. So I can write a SQL that goes from FIBO into the information in LKIF. Now, and what it then does, the business requirements are within the ontology, and this is really important to me. I often get this, can we skip this, can we just leave it in the PDF or in the spreadsheets? I always say no, put the requirements into the ontology so that then within the ontology we can connect them to the classes, to the rules that implement the requirement. And the way we do that is here the has code reference property that links here, that links the business requirement, in this case a particular USC paragraph, to the LKIF rule that implements that requirement. And then I can query bidirectional. No? I can look at a class and see where are the requirements for that. I can look at a particular SEC rule, and I can query where do I implement that. So that's critically important for data management. And now also another building block is RDFO representation of forms and reports. So form ADV is the SEC form that investment advisors must file with the SEC. And basically, so here this form up here, it is a LKIF legal document, and then here, all these classes here, these are the individual fields in the SEC form. And and then also I can use basically this staging class structure to populate FIBO with data. And here I just took it from the investment advisor published disclosure, where it provides data, actual filings with numbers from the investment advisor. I just picked the 50 largest. And how it works in detail here, just look at my session last year where I explained it in detail about the bank call report. Okay, so we get here data sets of actual investment advisor data. We populate with it the financial service provider, an extension of this, the investment advisor, and then we connect that to the FIBO monetary amount, which in this case here stores an extension here, the assets under management, and with that then I can run a SPARQL query and get reports out of the FIBO. Now this here is Excel, that again, just the same story like we had yesterday about the State Street, Cork University, and the Irish Bank spreadsheets. No? Okay, now how is the architecture here? So we have FINREG on imports FIBO, FINREG on imports LKIF, and does the ontology alignment. FINREG on onboards the text of USC and the Code of Federal Regulations. So that is kind of like the ontology for all financial services. And then we have operational ontologies, subdomain ontologies for insurance, banking, funds, and hedge funds. Today we speak about funds and hedge funds. And the subdomain ontology, they contain the regulatory forms, in this case, form private funds and form RDV for investment funds. Now, and now the legal reasoning framework, and this is LKIF stuff. So we have a legal status, like something like or I should say some business entity is defined as an investment advisor under paragraph 80B211. And we have material circumstances. These are like classification codes, numbers that we know about this business entity. And this is mainly data that we have in FIBO. And then what the legal rule does is it considers a material circumstance and it applies the legal status. And then here we have a shortcut that we can take and to say here a regulated S, and this is the data property that comes out of the legal reasoning process. It gets assigned to the FIBO business entities. So I have whatever Citadel capital management, they get assigned the property regulated as investment advisor 80B211. Okay, now the class, here's an example, the class details for excluded under 80B211A, so banks don't have to register with the SEC, they are already regulated with FDIC, FED, and so on. And now here what I see is the class definition here. It quotes the relevant law. The equivalent class here, I don't know if it's readable. Here the equivalent class is basically saying here something is a FIBO bank holding company or a FIBO savings and loan or a central bank and so on. No? It's a simple class definition that is taking FIBO information. And then now here then I can see after the reasoner runs, I find all the individuals that match the above equivalent class definition. And not surprisingly here, we get here all these federal banks. These are pre-populated already with the FIBO release. And now the second equivalent class, this is the one that actually creates a data property. Okay, and now then legal and financial rules apply the status. And here then we see the financial rules triggered applies the status excluded as a bank. And here again I see the inferences of the functional business entities that are considered as a bank. No, Citibank, Canadian Banking Corp. And then the regulated as legal status, it is basically an old property chain considered by, applied as, we mingle that together. That's what the property chain axiom does, and then we have a shortcut regulated as. And now with that then I can query here, I can do a SPARQL select of the functional business entities that are regulated and show me the status, no? And here then I have the result set. Okay, now this means a lot of legal rules encoded, no? A lot of equivalent classes. Now, how do we organize this in a meaningful, manageable way? Now, on top, or let's start at the bottom, the atomic facts here. These are basically legal rules, equivalent classes, directly working on the FIBO. In the most simple cases, FIBO already gives me what I need. I already get here a FIBO entity for brokerage firms, publisher, rating agency, businesses, and I add some more that I have atomic, simple derivation out of the FIBO data, okay? Now, at the top I have the legal rules, that's LECIF, okay? So that is how I encode on the top level to say a firm is defined as an investment advisor, excluded, exempted, prohibited. Now, in the middle layer, the financial conditions, Fund Ontology, it bridges, it ties the two together. Legal rule breaks down into financial conditions, and they in turn then refer to atomic FIBO conditions. Okay, and interesting fact about that, if you think about it, the atomic facts here, they are institution specific. Every bank, every investment company implemented FIBO will do it in a slightly different way. On the other hand here, the atomic facts, they can be reused across different jurisdictions. Yesterday we heard about State Street. The way State Street sets up the FIBO, which will be different from how Templeton does it. However, State Street can use what they did in Ireland and apply it to their compliance in the US, because the atomic facts describe the business, the financial conditions, so they are independent of the jurisdiction. On the other hand, the legal rules are specific to the jurisdiction. I'm doing the same stuff now for European regulations, and I start from scratch, no, because they encoded, they represented differently. And also then, and now they are legal rules specific to the legislation, but they are reusable across the FIs. All banks in the US will have the same set of legal rule classes. And then again, the financial conditions, they then provide the bridge from legal rules to the atomic facts in FIBO. And now, how do we get there? And here, well, we don't have any regulators in the room, but hopefully still a few banks. Oh, I'm sorry. And then I shouldn't. Okay. Now, what you should do is, First of all, adaptive FIBO and of course financial regulation ontologies. And now what I really want you to do is publish the laws and regulation in RDF. Right now, CFR, it comes out in PDF and XML. And I did my thing converting it to import it into RDF. And 100 people do the same thing slightly differently. So you should just like you move from PDF to XML, please add RDF to it, available for consumption. And then now then the next step, and that maybe a few years in the future, that would be also to have the forms and reports published in RDF. Not so accept filings in the future. That's the end state of semantic compliance. Accept filings in RDF, so then you can also directly use the information that you get from the banks and have it in your ontology. No? Okay, yeah, so the call to action, and I'm almost done here. The call to action is call your regulators today and ask them to publish laws, regulations, forms and reports in RDF. And with regulators, I mean regulators in general, not our lady here. No? And yeah, and if you have the PDF, I think, with the documentation, so if you want to read up more about the financial regulation ontology, there are a lot of tutorials and so on here. Same with the Fund Ontology, and the bulk of the ontology files, they are in Turtle, they are open source. They are available on this website, FINREC, Fund Ontologies, Bank Ontology, etc. You're free to download and to use it. Okay, and yeah, with that, to recap, the regulatory burden overwhelms the financial institution and the regulators. Conventional approach cannot cope. David yesterday had it much more forceful in his comments. And now the ideal state is that we have above the data an information layer with the FIBO and a knowledge layer on top of it that directly shows us inferred knowledge. And the way to do that here, to get to the knowledge, is taking the financial data in FIBO, laws and regulation as in the legal ontologies, and then use legal reasoning to move the gears, to move it together. And that is it.
Hey, questions? Corey.
Yeah. First, very cool stuff. I'm wondering if the, where you're representing the obligations to do registrations, if they're represented as obligations with some kind of deontic logic, or if they're just facts that the model says that they will be registered. In other words, are you recognizing these things as obligations?
Yeah, when I say regulated as, here it is an obligation.
Well, regulated as would imply the obligation, right?
It means that financial firm ABC is regulated as an investment advisor, that it has the obligation to register with the SEC. Right. So, and then it gets superseded. Once you register, then you have your registration number and so on. No? Yeah. Then it's no longer an application, then it's a material fact.
So you do have a representation of the obligation itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, Subhash.
The key point that we have seen, at least in the last few years, is that the regulatory compliance is always seen as separate from the main software development process, right? Because imagine if these processes are implemented, then you have a whole SDLC lifecycle for when you're looking at it, and then compliance is always coming as an afterthought. So any views on, if you've seen it anywhere, in terms of integrating compliance as a core thought process within the development, because we have unless ontologies are really taken up seriously in the development process, the compliance portion will always remain as an afterthought. We are also trying to change this mindset, but if it remains separate, you will not get the seriousness behind the compliance effort, and you will not even get an effort from the downstream process development, etc., to really focus efforts here.
Well, yeah, no, it's
Can you repeat what he said, please?
well, yeah, the question is basically like this framework what we've seen, it's like an add-on to the conventional ETL process, no? And whether I see it constrained to compliance or whether it can be applied in the core ETL data integration process. Is that accurate? Yeah. Well, the answer is yes. No. It's just like my background is in financial compliance, so I didn't think it out, and I didn't want to be a jack in all the trades. But absolutely, semantic compliance you can apply to any onboarding of legacy data into the ontology. And the thing about loading the business requirement, you can load USC CFR, the laws and regulation. You can do that with your own in-house requirements, and you should. No?
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. You got us right back on track.